it's Julia and welcome back to my channel. I've been working on a new design this week. I love the vintage or the retro truck and also these little Christmas gnomes. And so I wanted to combine the two of them into this design. I made a little mini quilt, a wall hanging, or it also can be used on your table as a table topper. It measures 23 by 23 inches. And in the corners, I have the three little gnomes and the little Christmas tree that are in the little truck. And I've called this Going Gnome for Christmas. I have the packet available in my Etsy store if anybody else wants to make this little design. I thought this would also be really cute on a pillow, so there's different options. Also, the little gnomes would make really a wonderful hostess gift, maybe as little coasters or something, or on a pillow. So I do have the instructions and all in the packet and all that good stuff, and also the link to this video in case you misplaced the video. But I also have the templates that are needed for all the pieces, and I've reversed them. And I made a larger, here's one of the Going Gnome for Christmas, and I also included a larger copy of that. I used a smaller copy on this, and I just felt that maybe it could have been bigger, and so I included a bigger one. And I also have some bonus sheets. I made the little gnomes a little bit longer and skinnier, and I thought maybe this week I'm going to try to do another project. I've been itching to do just a free motion with the Inktense pencils again, or Inktense blocks. And so I wanted to try that with this. So that'll be a next project. And I also did the same gnomes, only a little bit taller and fatter. Cute on a pillow maybe, you can play around with it. And then I also just included the truck. I thought this would be cute with maybe Christmas ornaments. You know, you can do whatever you want with it, but I just wanted to include that in case you wanted just to work with that. And so I wanted to mention I'm going to have a 15% off on my Etsy store, probably through December 12th. And so head on over there. I'll have a link down below for this particular packet, and then you can check out whatever else too. I think I can still get all Christmas gifts and things up until about December 12th. So I wanted to run a little sale on that. Thank you, everybody. Let's get started on this. I have some of my supplies laid out here. I did pick up some fat quarters recently at a quilt shop. This is a new collection, and it's called the Postcard Holiday by Pella Studios. It's really cute. I have Mormon Natural batting, and then scraps for the appliques. Just kind of dug through and got some greens and things that I thought would be nice. Whites, different whites for the beard. Everything will be listed down below. I am using a Heat and Bond Light for the paper adhesive for the appliques, and then a Solvay, which is a water-soluble stabilizer that I use to put my words on. And I'm just going to go over that method with you. It's just an easy way to add words to your project. And some embellishments. I'm going to add some embroidery floss words and also some buttons for the little decorating the little gnomes. The cutting, I have a 13 by 13 inch square. I go over all these in the packet too, what sizes you need. You're going to need 2 widths of the fabric for the inner binding. These are cut at 2 inches, and 4.5 inches by 2 widths of the for the outer, and then 4 of the 4.5 inch squares, and this again is for that outer border. And then stuff for binding. I did use, I think, 3 widths of the fabric for the binding. You're going to need the backing and a batting. For the border, the inner border goes on first, and I'm putting it on the 2 opposite sides of my 13-inch squares, and I'm pressing my seams towards the binding. Next comes the other sides. Again, just lining that up and stitching using a 1/4 inch seam, and then doing any trimming at the end here. The outer border now, I did measure that green, and mine measured 15.5. So you want to cut 4 of those, 4 at 15.5, and adding them onto the opposite sides of my square first. And then on the other two, you're going to add those little borders or those little squares. And just stitching that on both ends of those other two. Pressing those and then going to be stitching that using the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Getting those corners matched, those seams, and then pressing those towards the border. Onto these little cute gnomes. I'm tracing all my little pieces on my Heat and Bond light. I can see through that Heat and Bond light really well, so it's easy to trace, and everything is already reversed for you just for your convenience. My little templates are already reversed. Any of those dotted lines means those pieces go behind. So you can add those little dotted lines on as you are tracing. Rough cut these out. You want to leave an edge here, about 1/4 inch, but you don't have to be exact. Just rough cut them out. I do want to mention that I did go, you can see all that writing on there. I did number these. You can see here, this one is all for number 3. That's just for your reference at the end. It's so much easier to just make that reference on your Heat and Bond. Now I'm pressing these on the back side of my scraps of fabric. This is going to be for my little retro truck. And just adding some of the hats as well, using the same fabric for some of my other little appliques. Once those are ironed on and it's cool, then you go ahead and you cut right on the line to cut these little shapes out. I'm using a sharper scissor here and then also cutting that window out of that truck. Right on the line. And then it's to lay these little things out on my quilt. A gnome for each of the corners. And then one of the corners I put the little tree on. I am peeling that paper away from the back sides. And then just using my guide or my template as a guide as to how I want to lay these pieces to form these little gnomes. There isn't too many pieces to these, so it did go quite quickly. There's the little nose. I did keep all of my shoes. They're all black, and I kept them together. I didn't cut them out. Just easier that way, just cutting them out individually as I'm doing whichever gnome I'm doing. And then ironing it onto place. Tree went really quickly. Then on to the truck. I did put that pretty much in the center of that square. Possibly a little bit towards the top. If you were to use the bigger words on this design, you might want to move it up a little bit further. I'm using the smaller words. Should have maybe used the bigger ones. It's a little bit hard to read from a distance. So use your better judgment on that. And the words are next. Now you can certainly see through this cream colored and you could trace these. I just laid that underneath. You can even take it to a window or something. Trace it using heat erase pens or the water soluble pen. I am doing a complete different method on this. I'm using my water soluble stabilizer to form my words or create my words. I'm using the Solvay by Sulky. You can pick this up at sewing machine, any place that sells like embroidery sewing machines. I'll link it down below for you. My quilt shop carries it as well. Just cut off enough so I can see or will cover those words, and I'm just tracing it. It's clear, so it's really easy to see through it. I am using, I'll link my pen down below. It's a gel pen that doesn't smudge. I find that ballpoint pens don't want to write very well on this Solvay, so You might want to experiment with which pen works the best for you. Possibly a felt pen would also work, but you can see it there. And then I can lay that on my project any place I need it. This is a wonderful way to add words to a darker fabric too that you can't see through. Pinning that into place. And I'm going to use embroidery floss, and I am going to do some slow stitching on this. It's something I don't do very often. I just use 2 strands of that floss. And I'm going to just outline stitch, I think it's called, possibly, or back stitch, just the capital letters. So the capital G and then the capital C on Christmas. But you could certainly do the whole, all the letters by slow stitching. I think it just adds a really fun homespun look to a project. And then I also added, for the dots on the eyes, I added a little cross stitch, but you could also do like a French knot. You're going to see it here really quickly. It really turned out fun. Here it is. You can see I'm at my sewing machine now, but you can see those letters and the little X's on the eyes. And now it's on. I want a free motion stitch the rest of these letters on. So I have black thread. And now I just have the 2 layers. I just have my actual quilt top and then that stabilizer on the top. So I'm going right through that stabilizer, but it does give this enough shape so that I can easily do this free motion stitching. I just did a little back and forth stitch there, and then I'm going to snip off my thread. I did not bring the thread up to the top on this because you're not going to see any thread mess on the back side of this. I am going at regular speed so you can see how fast I am going on this. Going again right through this, I can easily see those letters. My feed dogs are dropped and I have my free motion foot on and I'm doing all the moving. And when I get to an end of a word, I just do a little jig, which will tie my thread off, and then I'm going to snip it and go on to the next word. Go back and forth a couple times. A lot of times when I do free motion, I go over it more than once, but I didn't on the words. I just went over it once. And now it's removing as much of that stabilizer. It cuts really easily. I don't want to distort any of my stitching, but I'm just going around and removing any of the big pieces. And now I spritzed it. I didn't show that, but I sprayed my quilt top with water, just not for it to be wet, but just damp. And then I just have a paper towel that I'm laying over the top of it. And then I'm gently pulling that paper towel away, and you can see it just kind of comes off on the paper towel. I noticed some of the residue was still on that first G there, so I sprayed it again with water and then laid another clean piece of that paper towel on that letter, just to get all of that stabilizer off of there. And my words are on, and it's time to make the sandwich. I have my backing and my batting cut a little bit larger than my quilt top. I think mine ended up to be 26 inches square. I think, yeah, something like that. I think my actual quilt top was 23 inches, and I went and I made it a little bit bigger. I did spray, you saw that bottle there, with heat, with a basting adhesive. I sprayed my batting just to keep everything in place, smoothed it all out, and now it's back to my sewing machine with my sandwich. I'm going to be going through all 3 layers and going to be free motion stitching these little shapes on. using black thread. Now this time I don't want that thread mess on the back of my project, and so I am drawing those, that bobbin thread. The bobbin thread is white, you can see it here, pulling that to the front or to the top. Just by lowering my needle up and down and then just gently pulling. And then I'm going to take off here, free motion stitching around my little pieces. I'll be taking those threads to the back after all my stitching is done and hiding them between my sandwich layers. I am going at normal speed here, but I'm going to speed it up in a little bit. But I wanted you to see how fast I go, just outlining everything. I am going to be going over all my stitches twice on my little appliques. On my letters I did not, on my words, but on my little applique stitches pieces I am going to. I kind of like the stitched on look. It kind of gives it a whimsical look, I think. So that, and then on these little wheels, I believe I went around a couple different times, 3 or 4 different times. And then onto these little gnomes. Now for the background, I have my cream colored thread on and I want to just do a loopy meander stitch. Again, pulled up my thread because I do not want a thread mess on the back of my quilt. Just kind of holding those out of the way, and then I'm taking off, and you'll see what my little loopy stitch that I'm doing. Just keeping all that that layer, that sandwich layer together. This is going to prevent any shifting through just wear or just. This I think will be on my wall. I might put it on my table. You're going to see some pictures at the end. And then I decided to add some more quilting, just stitching in the ditch around these borders. And I have my walking foot on for this. And then just stitching in the ditch. And you can see I added some free motion stitching to that outer border. Just really love how it turned out. Now it's on to getting... These are my self-threading needles. I'm going to list these down below in case anybody else has this issue with threading an eye of a needle. But these were so slick. You just pop them in, and then you can easily hide all these threads in between the sandwich, and then just clipping them off. So I went through and I did all that. Really slick, like I said, super easy needles to use. And then just hiding between the layers. I wanted to add some embellishments here. I could not find my pom-poms anywhere, and so I'm putting buttons on the little hats. But again, pom-poms would be really cute. And then I also have, I think one of my little gnomes has a shirt that I added a couple buttons to his shirt down here. And now it's on to trimming. Just want to get everything nice and even and trimmed up and squared. And then it's on to the binding and the hanger on the back side. I'm just going to be joining these pieces. I do not go through the binding video. I'll link that down below. But I joined my pieces and I pressed them all under. For that hanger, you're going to want approximately 3 or 6 inches less the top of your quilt. You'll see me, I'm going to be cutting it down, measuring it, and cutting it down. And then just turning down my edges and pressing those. I want to just hide the raw edges and get that nice and finished off. And then laying this on the top of my quilt. So my raw edges are together, and I'm going to stitch this using a scant 1/4 inch seam. So that seam will be hidden on when my binding is in place. And here's some pictures of it. I hope you enjoy this video. You're going to see it on my table here and also on the wall. I'll be doing a video, probably another one this week, using one of the bonus sheets on these little gnomes. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you have a creative week. Bye for now.